Welcome into Bayou Roar on this episode. We will be previewing LSU's upcoming game against the Alabama Crimson Tide and sharing my Week 11 college football predictions. But we're actually going to start about talking some basketball. So, LSU's basketball seasons for both men and women's have already started up now this week. And these first couple of games, of course, are basically just what I like to call tune up games. They're not really against any type of competition that's too serious right now. They're kind of just games against smaller opponents. And so the women's team went up against Houston Baptist and, beat them by a lot. They are currently crushing Southeast Louisiana as I record this episode. And LSU's men's team played Tarleton State and absolutely blew them out of the water as well. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about both of the teams just really quickly because this is going to be an interesting basketball season, I think, for both teams for different reasons. The women's team, I think, is interesting because I think, as good as this team has been under Kim Mulkey, really the women's program overall has been so good under Mulkey, obviously winning a championship a couple years ago. They've been super competitive. This team honestly has a lot of really good talent on it. It really does. I mean, you've got Flau'jae Johnson, who decided to come back for another year. Michaela Williams, who is back for another season. She's really good. You have Jada Richard, who a lot of people are expecting kind of step up a little bit more this year. But then you also got Malaysia Fulwiley, who transferred in from South Carolina. You got Kate Koval, who transfers in from Notre Dame, along with a lot of really talented freshmen from a class that is pretty highly regarded. This women's team not only has a lot of talent like up front as they usually do, they've also got some pretty good depth, it looks like, as well. So I think there is a lot of potential for this women's team to have a really, really nice season and to honestly be competitive for another title run. I know that's probably the expectation every year under Mulkey, but this seems to be the type of squad that they'll be able to do that. Just watching some of the highlights against Houston Baptist the other night, man, when they really put on that press defense, they are really good. And Fulwiley just fits in like a glove to this system as well. But of course, you just add her into the talent that already exists with Michaela Williams and Flau'jae Johnson. It's just like, holy smokes. It is going to be a hard task to beat the LSU women's basketball team this year, especially if they have a few more people off the bench this year that they can rely upon, maybe unlike last year where the bench wasn't as talented or deep. So I'll be really excited to watch them this season, see if they can continue to keep the momentum going under Mulkey. But the men's team also finds themselves in an interesting situation because I think Matt McMahon has honestly, you know, a much more different situation on his hands. Because while obviously we know Mulkey's going to do a great job just from her past, coaching experience and all those things, unfortunately for Mr. McMahon, this seems like it's kind of like the last potential season for him to try to put something positive together. This is the year that LSU went out. They actually invested some NIL in the transfer portal, grabbing guys like Mike Nwoko from Mississippi State. You got Dayton Thomas Jr., who came over from UNLV. You went out and got some guys that look to be pretty good from the portal. Now you're on this team. You're investing a little bit more money into your men's basketball overall. This is like kind of a make or break season for Matt McMahon. Now, what exactly does that mean for him? Is it just making the NCAA tournament? Is it just, being competitive in the SEC tournament? Is it, just, getting to the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight? Like, I don't know what LSU men's basketball qualifies as having a successful season, quote unquote. But I do know this. I think if Matt McMahon can't be at least a little bit more competitive in the SEC this year, can't be at least a little bit more competitive overall this season with this squad, he might be looking for another job at the end of this year. Because again, you look like you've tried to at least put a team together that will be competitive. And again, like I said, you've got some talent on here from the first game against Tarleton State. You've got Mike Nwoko, who comes in and can be kind of like a power forward center, you know, type for you. And he's got a lot of good talent for him. You get Jalen Reed back, which is a very big piece to add back into the equation because he is a very, very good basketball player. I mean, he was basically, the driving force of that team. I think it was last year before he got hurt. And man, once he went down, it was like you lost probably your best player on the floor for sure. And so you get him back, and maybe he's not quite 100% yet, but he looked pretty good in the opening game against Tarleton State on the few, highlights I saw from him. So, you add him into the equation back again. That's really good. That gives you a really good piece back. And so it'll be interesting. They also got Max McKinnon, who had a really nice opening game, especially shooting the three ball. And I'll say this for both the women's and the men's team, the one kind of concern I had with both is it seemed like there was at times where they got a little bit lazy defensively. Now, again, you are not playing the highest level of competition. So it might be one of those things of like, you kind of just fall asleep a little bit because you're like, okay, we're blowing them out of the water right now. You know, do we need to get things picked up here soon? And with the women's team, you saw them when they had more half court sets get kind of picked apart a little bit more from time to time. But again, when they turned up the aggressiveness at times, that's when you saw, okay, this team might be fine in the long run. But as for the men's squad, it was like as I was watching the highlights of the game, because I didn't get to actually sit down and watch it because thanks, YouTube TV and ESPN for having your big dispute right now. But as I was watching the highlights of it back, like Max McKinnon, for instance, had a pretty nice game shooting the ball, gave you really good offensive effort. But there was times he was getting beaten pretty easily by some of the guys on Tarleton State. And look, that's not to shade Tarleton State or anything. It's just Tarleton State and LSU are two very different levels of a team. Even in basketball, where maybe the playing field's a little bit more even as compared to like football or something like that, Max McKinnon shouldn't be struggling so much to cover guys from Tarleton State. So it's just like once you get to SEC play or just even competitive play with other Power Four schools, how is that all going to shake out for this LSU team defensively? I don't know. Now Max McKinnon may just be a guy they rely upon for some shooting, here and there. But all that being said, it's like, can this team actually come together, gel together, and again, put up a good effort once you start getting into the tougher competition? Because right now it's going to be all fun and smiles as you're blowing out, Tarleton State. And look, for the most part, they looked pretty good shooting the ball. They looked pretty good, defensively for the most part. Like, this team's got a little bit more talent to it than the year before. But again, this is kind of a make or break season. So you kind of got to see what you can actually get out of it. But again, we're so early on into basketball. I don't think it's fair to really judge anything off of just these opening games where you're playing nobody. So as the season rolls along and we continue to see more, we'll continue to talk about both of those squads. But I just wanted to give like a quick overview for both of them before we got into the main topic for this one, which is obviously breaking down the big game on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa as LSU travels to Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide. Now, look, LSU's obviously in a very, very interesting situation right now. Before the bye week officially started, you fired Brian Kelly. You sent him packing. You sent Joe Sloan packing. You named Frank Wilson the interim. Alex Atkins now moves into your OC role. He's going to be calling the plays. And now you've kind of got this whole new look on the rest of the season. Because now with just a couple games left on the year, you still got a lot to prove. You've still got a lot to show. You've still got all of the talent still available because nobody's really opted out or anything for the rest of the year. So now you're sitting there going, okay, we got to decide what kind of football team we want to be for the rest of the year. We're just going to pack it on up and, get to the end of the year and say, all right, adios, it was a fun run? Or do you try to go out there and fight and be competitive for the rest of the year and try to show people like, hey, we are a really good football team. Maybe we were just held back by the wrong person. And look, Florida last week against Georgia showed a little bit more life than they did before. And Napier, I don't think was necessarily anywhere close to the same type of coach as Brian Kelly. Like I felt like Napier was a much more, he connected with the players a lot more. He was a much more players type coach, while Brian Kelly was more of the, you know, play calling, X's and O's, putting things together, looking at the analytics, more of that type of coach. Not really as much of a players coach as Brian Kelly, as you can probably tell from how much he screams just at anybody in general, let alone his players. So, with all that being said, Florida showed a little bit more life after, Billy got let go because I think just that whole situation was such a heavy cloud upon them. And Florida went up against Georgia and showed a lot of fight, a lot of pep, and just looked a lot better. So that gives me a reason to hope that over the course of not just this game on Saturday night, but for the rest of the season, that an LSU squad that's got a ton of talent on it can now take that heavy cloud that was Brian Kelly, that was kind of looming over everybody. Now that that weight is kind of dispersed and is now gone, maybe you can go out there and kind of just play a little bit more loose, a little bit more free, and you can actually go out there, have a lot more fun, and actually play some really good ball. That's what I'm hoping. I'm not expecting a perfect run from now to the end of the year or anything like that, but I expect to see a team that's at least looking like they're having a lot more fun, that they're playing up to a much higher level than what they've played at the last couple weeks. Because I do believe this team still has a ton of potential to be really, really good. I do. So we'll just have to see. But we'll talk about the offensive and defensive matchups that are focused here, for LSU going up against Alabama. We'll start with the offensive side of the ball. Now, this is the one where we're going to have, I think, the most to see in this game. Because obviously, rolling into this, what has been LSU's biggest problems on offense? I think you can say, for the most part, almost the entire daggum thing, but it's been running the ball and honestly the offensive line. Those have been your two biggest problem areas all year long: running the ball, offensive line. Offensive line wise, you are walking into Saturday with a very interesting conundrum. You've got Tyree Adams, who's still out for a little while. Carius Kern was pretty banged up going into the bye week. It looks like he's on track to play Saturday against Bama, but still, how effective is a even a 90% Carius Kern going to be like, in this game? I don't know. But all I know is this is Carius Kern, in my opinion, is a really good player. One of those players that you're going to want to keep around anyways because of the talent he holds. I think even a 90% version of Carius Kern is better than floating DJ Chester back out there at left tackle. So, Carius Kern, if he does end up playing, I think that's a huge, huge, huge plus for LSU in this ball game. But offensive line wise, it's going to be really interesting because, see, Alex Atkins has some experience both with offensive line, and developing offensive lines and things like that, as well as some different play calling experience from his time at Florida State. And so I'll be interested to see if Alex Atkins can call some plays that maybe highlight more of the strengths of this offensive line, whatever they may be, that maybe we just haven't seen, that maybe Joe Sloan just wasn't able to exploit. Maybe Joe Sloan didn't know how to properly call plays that actually used his offensive line's strength to their advantage. Because here's the thing, there have been some glimpses at times of things where it's like, hey, that worked really, really well. Like, why aren't we doing more of that? It seemed like they ran that play really, really well. So I'm kind of hoping Alex Atkins will kind of find some more of those types of things and put them together, But all that being said, offensive line wise, you basically just are who you are at this point. I don't know if a bye week and a coaching change can really change that much about your offensive line, unfortunately. Because again, you have the same players that you did before the bye week. It's not like you went out in the bye week and you went shopping and you found, I don't know. I can't name you a like another player right now, but I'll float out a retired player that was really good. And you're not finding like an Andrew Whitworth type player at left tackle to come in and save you during the bye week. You're not finding those types of guys. At this point, you have who you have. And maybe Atkins can call plays in a way that protects them a little bit more. Maybe Atkins, puts together a strategy that focuses a little bit more, like I said, on what they can do well. Maybe that helps them a little bit. But all I know is this: the good thing about this for this offensive line going up against Bama is that it feels like Bama's defense has had a really weird up and down type of season in terms of its physicality. There's some times where this Bama defense seems to come out and absolutely punch you in the mouth, like absolutely put the pressure on you, absolutely goes out there and just is providing a ton of pressure, doing a lot of good things. And then there's other times it's like they're getting stonewalled at the line, like they're getting absolute stonewalled. There's no push, there's no physicality at all. It's been a very weird journey up and down this season, it feels like, for this Bama squad on the defensive front. Now, they've got some really talented players like LT Overton, who can really push you. Tim Keenan the third is a guy that has got a ton of talent, and he's really good. I've actually gotten to meet Tim Keenan the third in person. He is a very big human being. Like, again, very talented guys up front for that Bama defensive front. So, all that being said, what Bama version of this defensive line are you going to get? Are you going to get the really physical one, or are you going to get the one that maybe can get pushed around a little bit? I would care to venture at home in a nighttime environment at Bryant Denny, you're probably getting the most energy and the most, max effort that you're going to see, like they showed up against Tennessee with. So, all that being said, while yes, maybe this offensive line could turn some things around this week, I wouldn't necessarily know if I can say we should expect to see a huge leap in production from this offensive line this week. Do you think something you will see more of an improvement in is the commitment to the run game? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the run game all of a sudden is going to get so much better and you're going to see LSU run for 230 yards against Bama's defense on Saturday night. But I think Frank Wilson knows that running the football is a very important part to freeing up this LSU offense because they've just not been able to the last 2 years under Joe Sloan. And Harlem Berry, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, sorry, against A&M showed he's got some real talent. I mean, I think he was getting 11 yards a carry or something ridiculous like that, and then didn't get like almost any touches in the second half at all. Like, well, no, I don't think he was getting 11 yards a carry in that game. Sorry, that might have been against Vandy. I think against A&M, it wasn't necessarily 11 yards a carry, but he was a very effective runner against A&M nonetheless. And then only got like one carry in the whole second half against A&M. That's one of those things of, I think, if you can continue to stay committed to the run, you can continue to let Barry kind of chop away, do some good stuff. You let Caden Durham come in there, do his thing a little bit. Again, it's maybe not going to be for 230 yards, but if you can show a commitment to it, that can help to free up other things. Can help to free up the passing game and other elements of stuff that you're trying to set up for later in the game. You've just never had a really good flow with this offense all season. It's always just been super disjointed. And look, with Frank Wilson being a running backs coach, as well as Alex Atkins being a former offensive line coach, I would imagine with those two kind of collaborating together, we're going to see a bigger emphasis on the running game for LSU on Saturday. And I think that could be a very useful element to this. But of course, again, Bama's got some really good linebackers that can fly to the ball, that can play very physical. I've already talked about how their offensive line can be very, very good as well. This isn't going to be an easy team to run against, but if you can stay committed to it and you can get some chunks of yardage here and there, it could help you out a lot. Now, the other part of this is going to be obviously everybody's asking about the quarterback. Pretty much it has been confirmed that Garrett Nussmeier is going to be the quarterback in there. But from what we've heard from Frank, is this Michael Van Buren, they do know of his talent, and they said that they will try to use him at times, to try to sprinkle in some stuff to give them the best chance to win. And if you've been listening all year, this is something I've been harping on all season. Like, why not just throw Michael Van Buren in every now and again, a la Ryan Perrilloux in like 2007, when you kind of threw him in from time to time, along with Matt Flynn? Like, why would you not try to take advantage of a guy that's got a really good skill set, a guy that's got a pretty good arm, along with some good mobility? Like, why would you not try to sprinkle him in from time to time along with Nussmeier so that way the defense is kind of getting some different looks every now and again? I'll say this, even with the Perrilloux Flynn thing, it never felt like, teams just gave up on the fact that, oh, Perrilloux's coming in, let's just run block, or play run defense the whole time, focus on that. It's like, well, he could also always back out and throw it because he's got a pretty good arm too, So I could see the same thing with a Van Buren. It's like, yeah, when he comes in, there's probably a high likelihood it's an option or a keeper or something like that. But you never know because he could always also pull it up and decide to throw it and rip one down the field. Like, I just think there are ways to get him involved. And I think Frank Wilson is very much so committed to potentially doing anything that it's going to take to help LSU get a win. And so they may sprinkle him in from time to time. But look, for Garrett Nussmeier, obviously, the thing is you've got to be able to be dialed up and dialed in for this game because this Bama secondary, while at times you can kind of get them, they've got a lot of younger players in the secondary, but a lot of talent in the secondary. You can kind of get them sometimes. They'll give up maybe a play or two here and there. And look, you've got the weapons to spread it all over the field. Like, you can make them really work for it. You don't just have like one receiver that you're going to focus on all of the time. You're not just focusing on Aaron Anderson or you're not just focusing on, Xavier Thomas. I mean, you've got 4 or 5 deep in just your receiver room, along with Trades Green and Bauer Sharp that you're going to mix in. So you've got the weapons to kind of spread them out and keep them guessing, but you can't just, toss them up softballs the whole time because they are a very talented bunch. I mean, against Tennessee just a few weeks ago, probably the most back-breaking play for Tennessee in that ball game was on a very good drive in the red zone. Joey Aguilar just made a terrible decision trying to throw the ball to his tight end, I believe, on a flat route or something like that. And the Bama corner, to his credit, just made a great read, jumped it, got the ball, and ran the ball back all the way for a pick six towards the end of the first half. And so you can't give Bama secondary those types of opportunities because that can kill you. Against Missouri, Missouri was hanging around all game long, but the biggest backbreaker for them was the fact that, and that was when they still had their first string quarterback, he threw 2 very costly interceptions at 2 very inopportune times. And that was what really gave that game to Bama, honestly. Again, Missouri had played them very, very well, but those 2 interceptions really were costly. So for Nussmeier, Van Buren, whoever's out there throwing the ball, it's like, yeah, go out there and try to make some plays because there may be some plays to be had, but you got to be smart as well throwing the ball against the secondary because they've got some really talented guys and they can take advantage of you very, very quickly. So I don't necessarily love LSU's offense going up against this Bama defense per se. I think Bama's just got so much talent on that side of the ball still that's very, very high level. And even with some guys that are going to be out, like Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. suspended. He's mostly a like a backup. He's not playing a certain as like a significant role right now, from what I understand for them. So it's not like you're losing a starting corner in Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. I think they've maybe got some other defensive starters that are going to be out for this one, but I don't think it's anybody like that they don't have a good backup for, if that makes sense. So, with that being said, I don't love this matchup for LSU's offense on Saturday. I think, it's so, I don't want to discredit Nussmeier, but it's like, man, I'd feel a lot better if like Nussmeier just had much better mobility than what he does. I'm not saying go full Van Buren because Nuss can still throw the ball really well. I mean, there's been some flashes of that this year. It's just this doesn't seem like the same confident Nussmeier from last year. It doesn't seem like the same confident offense from last year that they also couldn't run the ball, but they definitely tried to throw it. But again, maybe for Nussmeier, this coaching change is a good thing. It allows him to play a little bit more like the way we know he can. You know what I'm saying? Like the possibilities are just endless with this offense. And again, with Alex Atkins calling the plays, you don't really know what to expect. So that's the other part of this. While I don't love the matchups from what I've seen in the past, this is also just such a new world to be in this week because we don't know offensively really what we're going to see because everything is taking on a much different approach for this weekend. So honestly, the offensive side of the ball is going to be the most wild thing to keep up with. And hopefully they actually go out there and compete a little bit. But the side of the ball that I feel a little bit more comfortable in knowing what they're going to probably be doing is the defensive side of the ball. And I'll say this, and I want to be very careful with how I say this. I want to actually start by prefacing this because I know if like Bama fans hear this or whatever, they're going to try to flame me for it. Alabama's offense is very, very good. With what I'm about to say is not discrediting them. Ty Simpson is playing at an absolute just monster level this year. He's been super efficient. He's played very confidently. He's honestly done a lot better than I thought he was going to do this year. He could end up being, in the Heisman race, maybe even the front runner for the Heisman if he continues to play at the pace that he's been playing at. Ty Simpson's been very, very good. Jeremy Bernard, very, very good. Isaiah Horton, very, very good. Obviously, Ryan Williams, although he doesn't always have the numbers to go along with it, the talent is extraordinary. The Ryan Williams talent level is beyond anything that you can really compare it to. He's very, very good skill set wise. Jam Miller, phenomenal running back. The offensive line is a lot of guys with a ton of high end potential. I am not trying to sit here and say that this Bama offense is bad when I make this comparison. But this Bama offense is not going to be like the Vanderbilt offense and the A&M offense that you saw the two games before going into the bye week. This is an offense that's much more set up like a Clemson or a Florida type offense. And I know Clemson and Florida are terrible teams, but here's the similarities between them and what Bama does offensively. Bama has a quarterback that can run for sure. Like Ty Simpson can take off every now and again. Pick you up 10 to 12 yards if he gets a clean run, slides down. He can do that kind of stuff. And obviously we know he's got the talent to pass the ball. He does that very well and very efficiently. But the difference is Ty Simpson isn't going to try to beat you with his legs. That's not his game. He's not a Marcel Reed, even a Diego Pavia type runner. He's not running really because he wants to. He's kind of running because, hey, this is the best option and I kind of have to. That's where I think LSU doesn't necessarily have an advantage per se, but this is where LSU can kind of hang around and be a little bit more competitive than what they have been the 2 weeks before the bye week. Because this is an Alabama offense that, man, if you can get some pressure on Simpson, it's not like he's going to run for 85 yards and a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? Like, he may pick up a first down here and there against you, but he ain't doing what Marcel Reed did to you or what Diego Pavia did to you. Now, where you've got to be more disciplined is with the times that he does try to escape the pocket, you got to try to be able to bring him down and do that very well. But also, the other point here is you've got to be very disciplined in your pass coverage. Because, like I said, they have got a ton of weapons. You've got the three receivers I already listed: Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, Ryan Williams. But you've also got Cuevas, the tight end, who has also been a very good target for Ty Simpson this year. And the tight ends have been something, honestly, against Vanderbilt. They beat you a lot with those, with the tight ends that they have. But Ole Miss also took advantage of you with their tight ends. You played great on the outside weapons. You couldn't cover the tight ends. And that's the thing. This is probably A&M, Concepcion and Mario Craver are a very good duo for sure. They're probably one of the best receiver duos in the SEC. I would still consider Bama's receiving core probably the best in the SEC because Jeremy Bernard has played like a stud this year. Ryan Williams, top end talent, is just, I mean, if he's on, he's on. That's the thing. I know the numbers aren't always there and they're not always super consistent, but you cannot deny if that man gets the ball and he turns it on, it's lights out, it's game over. That's just the thing. He's got that type of talent. Then when you add a really solid target like Isaiah Horton in the mix, like that's the thing. You've just got a lot of weapons there to go up against. But man, if you can get pressure on Simpson and play disciplined pass coverage against those guys, not let those guys slip behind you, do anything crazy, you can hang around in this game. You can. Like there is a world where you hang around in this game because your defense finally has a matchup that suits it a little bit better. Now, here's the other thing. You've got to be able to slow down Jam Miller and the running back core. Jam Miller, since he came back from injury, has been a tyrant out there running the football. I mean, he's big, he's fast, he's strong. Like, he is a tough guy to bring down. But if you're LSU and you want to hang around in this ball game, you've got to make sure he does not take over. The other running backs are good. You know, they're good running backs. They're just not at the same level as Jam Miller is. And so if you're LSU, if you're Blake Baker, you got to try to make them, got to try to put it all on Ty Simpson's shoulders. Because honestly, I think that's one thing that I'm like, I know Ty Simpson has played really well this year. But man, if you took away Jam Miller and you basically forced him to be the guy, and with Blake Baker's defense, where you never know where the blitzes are coming from sometimes, where pressure is dialed up from all these different crazy ways, can you make Ty Simpson feel that pressure to actually go out there and be the guy? You know, make him have those Heisman moments on Saturday night and make him feel that pressure. Again, this is the type of matchup where LSU defensively finally, I think, looks at this and goes, oh my goodness, you know, praise the Lord. We don't have to deal with a Marcel Reed running around anymore. We don't have to worry about a Diego Pavia type running around anymore, a Trinidad Chambliss. You know, the 3 games where our defense has really kind of not played to its best sometimes. We don't have to worry about that being the case now because Simpson's not that type of quarterback. He's much more like the quarterbacks we've already played and done well against. He's just at a much higher level than those two guys were. I would say definitely Simpson has been a lot better than Cade Klubnik and a lot better than DJ Lagway this year. But all that being said, defensively for LSU, there is a world where you hang around in this ball game and you play very well against Bama's offense. I can see that. It's just, are you going to get the offensive backing to actually be competitive in a road game at night versus, you know, a top 4 team in the country that's really chasing after a national championship aspiration right now? And that's the tough thing because by all means, in my heart of hearts, I would love for LSU in a season that's just been so chaotic now because of everything that's happened with the governor and the athletic director. And that's the thing. We haven't even talked about the fact that Verge Osbury got the title, then had it taken away. I'll talk about that in a second. But another crazy week where it was almost like we didn't even. I was walking into this episode going, are we even going to get to talk about Bama LSU because of all the craziness that's been going on? Like, that's been the weird part about all this right now. There's been such a firestorm around campus. Feels like football has been like the farthest thing from everybody's mind right now. And so heading into this game on Saturday, can you collect yourself enough to go out there and play a super competitive ball game and potentially come out with a win? And my little LSU heart of hearts, Homer diehard fan self, I would love to say, yeah, Frank Wilson's got that type of Coach O energy where he can go out there and rally these guys to maybe pull off some upset wins and have a good closeout to the year and end everything on a high note. But unfortunately, there's some parts of this that I just think don't go well in LSU's favor. One, it's on the road at night. Think about where your losses have come from this year. Two of the three that you've suffered have been on the road. You have not played well on the road in the SEC. You just haven't. And you ended up with some butt kickings too along the way in that. It doesn't bode well that you're going on the road to you know, a top team's, stadium for a night game especially. Does not bode well for LSU in that regard. Also, Whit Weeks looks like he's probably going to be out again on Saturday. And I'm not pinning all of the defensive success on Whit Weeks. That would be irresponsible to say that because the defense is more so the sum of all the parts, not just one player. Because you got to, I mean, Whit Weeks isn't playing safety or corner, like he is playing linebacker. But the problem is he's a very good linebacker. And not only that, he's been your green dot guy all year, calling the plays, getting everybody set up. Like he brings a lot of spirit, a lot of energy, and just a lot to this defense that you love. And once again, it looks like he's going to be missing. And that is a very tough loss to overcome, no matter who you're playing or what week it is. Unironically, what week it is. But also, the other thing about this is, like I said, coaching changes sometimes can bring a lot of energy. They can bring a lot of changes. The Coach O season is a prime example of, man, you come out of a weird coaching situation, you inherit a new one. They can really get fired up real quick and have some success. They can. But there's also something to be said that this is the same roster that lost to Ole Miss on the road in the tight one, got dragged up and down the field by Vanderbilt, and although the final score wasn't a huge deficit, you still got out bullied the whole time. And then A&M absolutely whipped you in front of your home fans. This is the same roster that went and lost those 3 games. So can this roster with the same players actually turn it around and turn it into something positive going into Saturday? I just don't know. It's hard with this being the first game since the coaching change because you just haven't seen anything yet. And while, yes, that could bring LSU some advantages, I just don't know if it will. I've mentioned this before. I live in Tuscaloosa. It's a very hard life sometimes for me. But a lot of people have come up to me and said, man, I'm really nervous about this LSU game because I think with the coaching change, all the weird stuff, this just seems like a game that we're going to drop. And if it was in Baton Rouge, I would maybe understand that a little bit more because some weird stuff can happen on a Saturday night in Death Valley with a team that kind of is feeling maybe a little bit better about themselves, the coaching change and all that. But again, the cards are all falling more so in the favor of Bama, a team that is playing at its highest level right now, has turned it around from a terrible week 1 loss to being in a prime position to compete for the college football playoff and potentially a national championship run. And so, with that all being said, I predicted Alabama at the beginning of the year to win this game, even before the season started. And I still feel like Alabama is going to pull out the win on Saturday night in Bryant-Denny Stadium. They're a 10-point favorite right now. I could see it being about 10 points. Could see it being even closer than that, again, if LSU's defense shows up and plays at the same level they were before against the Clemsons and the Floridas. If they can play that kind of defense again against Alabama, they'll have a chance to hang in there. I just don't know if the offense has enough togetherness to actually go out there and compete and stay competitive and keep them in the game. So I'm picking Alabama to win on Saturday night in Bryant Denny, and it will be unfortunate. But the thing is there's still a lot of season to go after that. You've got a chance to beat Arkansas, you've got a chance to beat Western Kentucky, and who knows, you could go on the road and beat Oklahoma later in the year. Doesn't seem very likely, but that there is a possibility for that. So there are still some things to still look forward to, even if LSU loses on Saturday. And look, at this point, you've already fired your coach. Not that this season is a wash by any means, but this season is not necessarily a success. You've already got 3 losses going into November. Even if you swept your way through the rest of the schedule, I still don't think they're going to let this not like if they won out and they went 9-3. They're not letting this 9-3 team from LSU get into the college football playoff. They just wouldn't. Even with a win over Bama, even with a potential win over Oklahoma both on the road, just the way you got beat by A&M, the way you got beat by Vanderbilt, the way that you just squeaked out wins with pathetic offensive performances against Florida, even Louisiana Tech, teams like that. I don't think they would let this LSU team in, even if they won out the rest of the way into the college football playoff at 9-3. So, with that being said, if you lose on to Bama on Saturday, this isn't the end of the world because this season already is not one that you would consider to be an overwhelming success by any stretch of the imagination. But I think if you can go in there and be competitive and hang around, and yeah, maybe you only lose by 5 or 6, that's at least a really good step in the right direction, for the rest of the year. So, with that being said, I do have Bama winning, but hopefully it'll be a little bit close. But before we close out this section and go on to the pick section, I do want to talk about Verge Osberry just very fast as we wrap up the LSU portion of this one, because Verge Osberry had a weird week for him this week. He was announced as the official new athletic director after the new LSU president was announced on Tuesday. And, it was super exciting for a lot of people. A lot of people very much believe in Verge Osberry. He actually applied for this job. I think the last time it was open, was in the running for it, just didn't get it. And he's a guy that I believe went to LSU. I think he maybe played for LSU as well. He bleeds purple and gold. He loves LSU by all means. Just from resume alone, this is the type of guy that like you would like to have at LSU, right? A former Tiger that loves the program, wants to see it do well. Yeah, as an athletic director, you would like a guy like that to be at the helm right now. I know I don't know enough about it. I would have to read more into it. I know there are some very serious concerns and red flags about stuff that happened while he was here on staff during the Les Miles era, where a lot of Title IX stuff came up and all that. Again, I haven't read enough about that to really dive into that, so I can't give a full personal opinion. I'm not trying to sit here and endorse Verge Osberry. I'm just saying a guy with that type of credentials is the type of guy you would look for. And a lot of people have been saying this is a home run hire, so who knows? But all I'm saying is this. Verge is going to make the final decision as the head coach, whether you like him or not, whether he's the full-time AD or not. He is going to make the final decision in finding the next head football coach for LSU. So hopefully now that he's kind of got the backing of the university, maybe he goes out there and maybe he kind of turns some of this dumpster fire around a little bit and actually goes out there and gets a pretty good coach. So all I'm saying is, I don't know what he's like as a regular human being. Again, I don't know enough about that Les Miles era stuff to really know for sure if I can make a judgment on it at all. But all I do know is this. It's at least nice to know that they have a plan in place for athletic director right now, because that at least gives you some more stability for this. And I'm glad that the new president admitted, hey, I didn't mean what I said when I, spoke and said, that he wasn't the real athletic director. Basically, he just didn't communicate clearly. What he meant was everybody's being judged off of their performance, not just off of accolades that they bring into the job or whatever. Like, so that's what he was trying to communicate. He just didn't do that well. Verge Osbury is very much your full time athletic director. So that looks like the next move for LSU, which again, that brings some stability to the office, which hopefully is going to make the job look a little bit better now than what it did in the middle of all this chaos. So, but with that being said, Verge Osbury is your new athletic director for the LSU Tigers. And now I guess the next thing is finding the next football coach. So, no real timeline on that, but hopefully here over the course of this next month, we'll start getting a little bit more traction on who that might be. But now we're going to move on to our week 11 college football picks. I'm excited to share those with you. All right, let's get into some week 11 college football picks. Kind of crazy it's already at week 11 of the year, but got some good matchups on tap for this weekend. We got BYU versus Texas Tech on Saturday at 11 o'clock. Texas Tech is a 10.5 point favorite. The other crazy thing about this game is that it is the number 7 and number 8 teams in the country going up against each other in this one. So, honestly, that is wild that in the year of 2025, BYU and Texas Tech is a top 10 matchup on a Saturday. But I like the Texas Tech at 10.5. I think BYU is a good team. I just think Texas Tech is a little bit better. And so I'm going to go with Texas Tech to beat BYU on Saturday. Also got Oregon facing off against Iowa in a top 25 matchup on Saturday, with Oregon being a 6.5 point favorite. Oregon, I could see this being a game that's tough for them. Iowa is usually just a very gritty, tough team to go up against, especially on the road. But I like Oregon in this one, so I'm going to take Oregon to beat the Iowa Hawkeyes on Saturday. Then you got Texas A&M going up against Missouri, where A&M is a 6.5 point favorite. And what really stinks about this game is that, I would love to say for like A&M that going on the road to Missouri could be a trap game for them. But at this point, Missouri, I think they're down both their starting quarterback and maybe even their backup. And even with a defense that's edgy and tough, I just don't know if they're going to be able to slow down Marcel Reed and company. And so, as much as I would love to pick Missouri in a hate watch to beat Texas A&M on Saturday, I just don't think they're going to do it. And so I'm going to pick A&M to beat Missouri on Saturday. I like that for them. Really, there wasn't any other top 25 matchups that were like super intriguing. So I also put Florida and Kentucky on this list, basically as like the bottom scrapers of the SEC almost. It feels like just two teams that are really struggling this year. But Florida is going up against Kentucky, where Florida is a 3.5 point favorite. I don't know what it is, but it seems like when you're playing Kentucky, you just play down to their level sometimes because they are not a very good football team. But I think Florida, with some of this new energy with the coaching change and all that, they put up that kind of fight against Georgia last week. I think even going up against Kentucky this Saturday, they'll be able to put some of that energy together again. And I got Florida pulling out the win on Saturday over Kentucky. So again, with our big games for this weekend outside of course, LSU, Bama, BYU, Texas Tech, I've got Texas Tech winning that one. Oregon going up against Iowa, I've got Oregon winning that one. A&M at Missouri, I've got A&M pulling that one out. And then Florida against Kentucky, I've got Florida Gators winning that one. And then for our interesting game of the week, I got another SEC matchup at 11 o'clock. It is Georgia going on the road to face Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State, they got their first SEC win in a long time last weekend. I was so excited for them, super pumped. And now they get to host Georgia on Saturday in Starkville. And look, I'm not saying that I think Mississippi State's going to pull the upset against Georgia. I'm not. But I'm just saying I think this game could be a lot more interesting than people are giving it credit for, because it's an 11 a.m. game at Starkville. Georgia kind of has been a team that struggles a little bit in the first half to get things going a lot of the times. They kind of heat up more in the second half. So I'm just saying this could be a wildly entertaining game for the 11 o'clock hour on Saturday because Mississippi State definitely has the potential to hang around in this one and absolutely go crazy and just, keep this one tight for a long time. I would say if I was going to pick it, probably would still pick Georgia just because I think Georgia's got a little bit more depth. And so I think Georgia could probably just more so outlast Mississippi State than anything. But still, this could be a wildly entertaining game at 11 o'clock. So keep Georgia and Mississippi State on your radar as you head into your college football weekend. But that is going to do it for us on this one. Hey, thank you guys so much for following along and watching. If you would, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast from. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend watching college football. And of course, as always, let's go Tigers.